welcome to Codex, a casual lore podcast. My name is Logan.
And I am Phil.
Today, we are going to continue some discussion about the Grand Exchange in old school Runescape. But before we start on that, what is your bright spot, Phil?
My bright spot. Oh, this one's easy. This morning, we have a structure in the family because my wife and I are, for the life of us, completely incapable of going to bed at a reasonable time, which is 9 o'clock in this house. A reasonable time is 9 o'clock. So okay. we end up staying up too late, and then it means that one of us has to wake up with the kid at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is not great. So
that
we
5 a.m. can roll around awful early some days.
Yep. Yeah. So we trade off for the most part. So one of us gets to sleep in a little bit later to sleeping in 7:30ish, maybe 8 if we're lucky. While the other one wakes up and takes care of the boy in the morning. But I got to sleep in a little bit today, and then I got woken up at 7:45, and my wife and my son came up and they're like, "Hey, how do you feel about going to the beach today?" And I was very groggy, so I said, "That sounds great." So we spent the morning with a surprise beach trip and hung out at a really nice beach out by us that I love going to.
I feel like that is like platonic bright spot right there.
Yeah. It was 65 degrees, sunny, beautiful, barely packed when we got there because we got up early, so we ended up getting to the beach at 9 a.m. It was perfect.
And you didn't have to plan any of it.
Nope, I just showed up. I drove us there. That was my participation. The ideal bright spot.
Well,
how about you?
Mine's going to be a bit of a cop-out, a little bit, because it's going to actually transition us into this episode. I can't remember if it came up in our last record or if it was after we had stopped. But I think it was after we stopped. You and I both tried to log into our old school RuneScape accounts.
Yes.
I haven't been on in a number of months, which is common. That's how most humans play old school RuneScape. And normally, when I know I'm going to not play for a while, which I did this last time, I make sure I didn't leave anything sitting in the Grand Exchange. Because a lot of the items that I flip for profit are sometimes, a huge chunk of my liquid assets, 90% or more of my gold pieces. Sometimes I'll sink into a flip, which I'll normally execute over a few hours because that item's price fluctuates, a mil or two over the course of the day. And sometimes, an item nerf or something will happen and a 100 mil item might turn into a 20 mil item over the course of a day or two. So I tend to not leave any offers in, but this last time I had forgotten that I intentionally left offers in, and I made about 25 million gold pieces on those.
Nice.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit. What I made money on were some elemental battle staffs, because when I had stopped playing, there was some talk that they would be reworking the combat mechanics to include elemental damage types. I believe that has happened now. I'm still a little out of date with the game. I'm going to probably start playing again soon because of all of this. In which case, we'll talk about that then. But originally, the way the combat spells worked, there's your standard 4 elemental types: air, earth, water, fire. And they were always in that order. So you would get an air spell, and then an earth and a water and a fire spell. But the fire spell always dealt the most damage, which meant if you could cast the fire spell, you would just always cast the fire spell. Just do that one. Yeah. Once you unlock that one, there's no reason really ever to cast Earth Blast again, unless you have a bunch of Earth runes you need to burn through for some reason.
Okay, so was it almost completely damage dependent then? Fire did not do fire damage; it just did more damage.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
The magic spells, the combat spells are kind of in tiers, and you have like your base damage, and then it scales a little bit off of your magic level. So the fire one always just has a higher floor than the air spell does.
Okay.
And in combat, you'll typically bring like an elemental staff, and that staff will provide you free runes of that element. So if you're going to cast a bunch of fire attack spells, you're going to bring a fire staff to cast your fire blast. So that way you're not chewing through, 15 or 20 fire runes per cast. They just come out of the out of the staff for free.
Okay.
So what that means is traditionally the fire staff has some more utility to it than like the water staff would.
Sure.
So, most of the elemental battle staves, the volume they get dropped in and the way they enter the game means that they were all pretty much at their high alchemy value. So my thought was, cool, I'm going to stop playing for a while. If this elemental change happens, there's going to be a reason for people to be buying water staves again. So I invested a bunch of money in all of the water and earth staffs, primarily because those were the least used, and they were already at alch value. So if the change didn't go through,
you'd basically make back what you spent.
Exactly. Worst case scenario, I get some magic XP, and I manually turn those sticks into gold.
Yep.
But I logged back in, and a lot of them quadrupled in price or more.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. So that was a fun surprise.
Yeah, that's nice. Okay. That's a good bright spot for just logging in one day.
Yeah, and that's like about a month's worth of membership time if I chose to spend the gold that way.
Does the gold works in my only frame of reference for this is Eve. I assume that other ones do it as well, but you can basically turn the in-game currency into monthly time.
Yeah. So there's an item in the game called an old school bond, and that provides 14 days of membership.
Okay.
Little bit of a controversial addition to the game, because that was the first time that with like in the game rules of old school RuneScape, you could realistically peg GP to a dollar value.
Yep.
Although people had been doing that on the black market.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah. It was the first official.
Yeah. I worded it that way for a reason. And it's still that way. Like your GP to dollar value is still like I think it's traditionally it was about half on the black market relative to what you got for a bond.
Okay.
But the bonds existing are nice because it gives you membership across both games, which is neat. So you only have to pay membership once to have access to RuneScape 3's premium and old school RuneScape's premium content.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it gives you an option to like have access to all of the members' content without having to give them human dollars every month if you choose not to.
Is it like a usurious amount, or is it like decent?
So, to who, I guess.
I mean, for the time that you end up spending in the game, like, does it feel like you're bottoming out how much money you can make just to stay in the game, or does it feel like it's a decent amount of change for what you're getting?
Yeah, so it's about let's check what the price is now, because I don't know. I think when I glanced at it last week, it was like 10 or 11 million gold per bond.
And that's 14 days, you said?
14 days. Or you're 12 or 15 bucks a month, something like that. So you're talking about 20. Yeah, it looks like current price right now is bouncing between like 11.7 and 12.7.
So so the bonds are actual in-game items then?
Yes, it is a physical item that you have.
Are they traded? Like when you're talking about prices fluctuating, like can you be a person who sells the bonds?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and there's a cost to doing that too. Bonds are like a very specialized item. They have some rules that only apply to bonds, which, makes sense because it's a very different thing than an iron scimitar.
Sure.
So the bonds are in a tradable state or a non-tradable state. If you trade it, it moves from tradable to untradable.
Oh, okay. So it can only transfer once.
You can transfer it multiple times, but anytime you trade it, I think it costs 10% of the bond's current value in gold.
Oh,
something along those lines. I haven't spent a lot of time with bonds. You can make a lot of gold trading bonds if you're clever about it, and it's a little high risk for my taste because I am a coward with my trades.
That's fine.
Yeah, I've made a lot. I've made more than enough money doing what I need to do. So, personally, I don't spend them. I don't spend my gold on them. I would rather spend my gold doing other things, but I totally could. To try to answer your question on like, is that a tough ask? It kind of. This is where we start to get into the gross vibes people get playing this game for long enough. Is that's really related directly to how much gold you can make an hour.
Right.
And if you like doing the thing that makes you gold an hour.
Yeah. So like if you like playing the premium content that you get from the pass, like you are not making the amount of gold, like playing the game and having fun to be able to buy that bond. Like you have to engage in these like exchange mechanics.
Yeah. And actually, let's talk about our first item right now. We're gonna bounce back and forth between that question and the first item that I want to. Well, what's now the first item I want to talk about? We're gonna look at the Zulrah teleport, and this is an item that is directly related to like the first big money maker that happened in old school RuneScape, which was the release of Zulrah. Zulrah is. I'm gonna send you a picture of Zulrah. You should see this thing. Zulrah goes by many names. The money snake is one of the more frequent ones.
You started with my favorite phrase in lore things of this thing. It is known by many names, and then you followed it up with the money snake.
The money snake
is not what I expected.
That's why I went there. So this was one of the first big pieces of content that happened to old school RuneScape that wasn't related really to anything from like the 2007 version.
Okay.
So this is something that is like did not happen in the original timeline of RuneScape. Doesn't exist in RS3. This is like a piece of content that starts and stops exclusively in old school.
Huh. Okay.
So Zulrah is this big snake thing, and for some reason this PNG is not sending. That's okay. Here's a website. Oh, that's not working either. Cool. Doesn't matter.
God.
It's a big snake in the poison wastes.
I made the foolish decision to Google money snake as a phrase.
Oh. I don't even want to know what comes up with that.
It's fine. It's a bunch of RuneScape stuff.
Is it? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good. It's like that could go. I hope there's not like, I don't know, some like Internet Dictionary archive page of some horrible ad from the mid-2000s.
Listen, I didn't scroll very far because I didn't want to see what would happen.
Yeah. Okay. So
I mean, this thing's rough.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a like snake deity that lives in the poison wastes. There is now a cult and a high priestess that sometimes you just gotta like sacrifice a kid to this thing to keep it from storming and killing everybody.
Okay.
But this was a repeatable solo only boss. So you can go to the boss, you kill it, you leave, you replenish your health, you get potions and food back in your inventory, and you go and you kill it again. And you do that until your brain slowly oozes out of your ear.
Okay.
Let's look at. So we're going to look at the Zulrah teleport tab, or teleport scroll, that this thing drops. When Zulrah first came out, if you got the drop... Have we talked about drop tables at all?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it's basically, here's a list of all the shit you can get and percentages based on those random rolls, right?
Yeah. Occasionally there's like some tiered levels to that we don't need to worry about, where it'll like roll various tables in succession based on previous rolls or things like, there's a lot of complexity to it that really won't matter for the purposes of any of our discussion. But we're going to look at prices right now, just to kind of give you an idea, but there's a 1 out of 256 chance that when you kill this thing, it hits the unique item table. There's 4 items on there, and they're all worth multiple millions of coins. And that's basically why you're there. Well, that's why you're there now. There's kind of 2 different ways that they sort of balance the gold that gets generated by a boss. Either you end up with like relatively consistent profit through like supply drops. It'll drop either like raw ingredients for other skills, like maybe herbs that you need for potion making, or tree seeds that you use for farming, ores, logs. This thing drops dragon bones for some reason. So those things are all items that hold their value pretty well, and they're pretty baseline, and they're usually on the drop tables pretty often. And then you also have unique items, which only come from that specific monster. Those are typically more powerful, way more expensive, and usually more rare. Some monsters, you might have like a pretty good GP per hour that's actually like reasonably steady. So Zulrah was one of those. I don't know if it still is. Vorkath is a big dragon. That's another one that became pretty consistent. Or sometimes they've gotten away from this because it's less fun, but sometimes they have bosses where maybe you're even losing money on most kills, but there's a 1 out of 1,000 chance you're gonna make like I don't know, like 1 billion gold, like actually like 1 billion.
Jeez. Okay.
But you know, if it takes 5 minutes to kill that thing and 2 minutes to walk to it, and you need to hit a 1 out of 1,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of time you're spending in the hope of hitting it big.
Yeah, and if you look at like the per hour rate, the per hour rate might be pretty good. It might be, you know, like 5 mil an hour. But really it's like negative 20k an hour, and then you have 1 hour where you made 1 billion gold.
Yeah.
Compared to something that's actually spitting out like, you know, 2 mil an hour. And you're hitting that 2 mil an hour averaged off like, you know, every 2.5 hours or so. You're still making that like 2 mil an hour average.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So Zulrah was one of those that at the time was kind of both. It like gave you really consistent profit, but also had drops that were worth a handful of mil each. So this thing became like kind of the bar. It was hard to do anything else. Like I could go and maybe like make, I don't know, skilling wasn't really ever profitable in old school for a long time. Maybe you could go do Slayer, which is like a different set of monsters to go kill that a lot of players generate profit. And maybe you'd make like 900k an hour doing that. But if you made 4 mil an hour doing Zulrah, and you want to buy something that costs 50 mil,
yeah,
are you gonna go do option 1 for 65 hours, or do option 2 for a quarter of that?
Yeah. You go where the money is, right?
Exactly. And once you start like framing the game in how many times do I have to kill Zulrah to do the next thing, that can get people into some like gross mental loops.
Yep.
But it also means that like efficiently killing Zulrah is a big deal. Or efficiently doing anything in the game really is a big deal. If you can shave 30 seconds off of each of those kills, that's a huge downstream effect.
It is very funny. We've done one episode on the Grand Exchange so far, and we have done like one test episode a long time ago about Peruvian gold farmers. And just from this conversation and those, it's so funny listening to you talk about this and how 100% in exactly like the front door of your wheelhouse this game is.
I know it's
like,
a problem.
Like it's like speed running meets like profit analysis and like finding loopholes within things to like make it function and like efficiency engine stuff so much faster than you could ever make it go. And it's very funny. Just finally like seeing what about this game from, Stuck in Time in 2007 is what like really makes you stick around, and it is those things.
Yeah,
it's very funny to me.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, that's why like it's kind of hard to talk about too, because everything's so interconnected and granular at the same time that like this has been a weird exercise for me to try to deconstruct it, and also to try to understand how to explain this to someone who doesn't have RuneScape brain rot.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Already.
Yep.
Okay. So you have to kill Zulrah 120,000 times. That's the thing you have to go do so you can, I don't know, raise your herb lore from 86 to 91 so you can go do something else 20 seconds faster.
Yep.
So there's a couple ways to get to Zulrah. One of them is to take a charter ship from a port, pay like 20 or 30 gold, and then walk forever. That sucks. You don't want to do that. That takes multiple minutes, and it's really inconvenient. That's going to kill your profit per hour. Another option is there's a teleport method that gets you pretty close, but to use that, you need to have completed a whole quest line already. And you also need to have, I think it's 76 agility to jump across some stones in a stream. We'll say it's 76. The number doesn't matter. You need a pretty high agility level. Getting a high agility level sucks. That really sucks. No one wants to do that. Also, if you are trying to make bots to do Zulrah to generate a bunch of money for you in the background, that means your bots have to have 76 agility.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Oblivion rules where the more you jump, the faster your agility goes up?
Oh, no, that would be like only mostly terrible. Honestly, the most, well, again, my information might be a little bit out of date. Typically, the most efficient way to raise your agility was to do rooftop agility courses, which is just running laps, somewhere. Just click the same like 9 sections on the screen in the same order forever.
There is a part of that sounds absolutely god awful and terrible, but I also have to just sit here and nod in agreement that like that is technically how you get better at running.
Yeah,
you just have to keep
doing it.
It's tedious as shit, but you can do it and you get better.
Yeah, you do rooftop parkour. It's actually like it's another neat old school thing that didn't exist in the original. The original, there were like set agility courses you went to in a few locations, and it was even more miserable than it is now. And it's still, agility is bottom 2 skills in the game.
Okay.
It's agility and runecraft. Those are by far going to be at the bottom of almost everyone's list, are going to be those two. It's gotten better in recent years. They've added some mini games to smooth out the training, but those ones, so you need like 13 million XP to get to level 99 in a skill. And both of those capped out at around like 30k an hour.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, so it also doesn't scale very well.
No, you'd be 30k an hour from like level 20 forever. Where a lot of the other skills might make it up to the like 60 to 85,000 an hour is pretty common.
Okay.
And the fast ones up to a couple 100,000 an hour if it's like a more expensive method for a couple of the skills. So going from something like fletching, which was my first level 99, that I was able to like break even and still get like 200,000 XP an hour, to drop that down to like 25k is miserable.
So slow. Yeah.
And on top of that, agility and runecraft are both very click intensive. So it's not something like woodcutting where you're clicking once every 3 minutes and it can like almost be an idle game. So like a 45k an hour woodcutting XP isn't terrible because I just did woodcutting while I was writing term papers. And it was fine. I got to listen to the RuneScape music and that was kind of nice. It like really wasn't a big deal. But you kind of have to be always looking at the thing to do agility. And it's incredibly slow. And you don't get any money for it.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah, so having level 76 agility...
So you don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that. And especially if you're like someone who's really profit-focused, those people typically don't have high agility levels because it's miserable.
Sure. Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
That brings us to the Zulrah teleport. The Zulrah teleport... plops you right by where you need to be to go fight Zulrah, and you skip that agility shortcut. So it's a little bit quicker.
That's convenient.
Yep, and you bypass needing that agility level. So that's super cool if you're a player who doesn't have the agility level. It's also super cool if you're rule breaking and running a bot farm that's killing Zulrah on like 15 accounts. Because that means you don't need to get that agility level on each of those bots. Which means that's less time you're spending in the game not generating money. It's also less time you're spending in the game worrying about that account being banned.
Sure, yeah.
So the Zulrah teleport, pretty key to fighting Zulrah efficiently.
Yep.
When Zulrah first came out, let's see, the Zulrah teleport is in the resource table, I think. Oh, no, it's in the other table. So 1 out of 16 chance, give or take.
Okay.
That you're gonna hit the Zulrah teleport. When Zulrah first came out, if you hit that drop, it dropped 50 of them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. And when you're first learning Zulrah, it's a pretty complicated boss relative to most of the other combat in the game. And that was even more true back when it first came out. So it's not uncommon to like have to leave, like, especially when you're first learning. So you're not necessarily getting a kill every trip.
Okay.
But once you get good at Zulrah, it's not uncommon to get like multiple kills per trip before you have to go back and go to the bank and get new supplies and refill your food and your potions and that kind of thing. So dropping 50 at a time meant that anyone who's killing Zulrah regularly would never have to buy these things. They would have way more than they would ever use. So, if we look at this, let's see if this picture sends right away. I hope it does. It did. Cool.
There we go.
Okay, so here is a price graph I found from the Zulrah teleport. You can see this one starts in May of 2015. I will tell you the price was about 100 GP, give or take, 10-15%.
Oh,
and it was like that all the way up until, looks like, the middle-ish end of 2015?
Yes.
Yeah.
That feels right.
So, when Zulrah first dropped, that thing dumped out 50 teleport scrolls at a 1 out of 16 chance. And again, if you're getting, 3 or 4 kills per trip, that's 3 or 4 chances at that 1 out of 16 shot for each scroll you have. So yeah, you're going to have them just flowing out of your ears. So pretty quickly, they adjusted that down to only 20 per drop instead of 50. That happened during that time when that price is still stable at 100. So that was not enough. It didn't change really the price at all. And you'll see right around the tail end of 2015, the price starts to go up, and it starts to go up pretty quick.
Yes.
And it just keeps going up, and it just keeps going up. And eventually it hits a peak, like, well over 40,000 gold per scroll.
Yeah, this looks like it's over 50,000.
Yeah. And that's a smooth graph, too. So, like, that's plotting daily trends over that time. So I'm sure there were spikes well over 60K.
Jeez.
So, what could cause that? Update, 15 June 2017. sorry, 15 of October, 2015. There we go, 2015. That makes more sense. Quantity of Zolandra teleports was changed from 20 to 1.
Oh.
So this was
that's a big change. Okay.
Yeah, and that happened overnight. Like, nope, that was not a thing that was like being like trial ballooned to the community ahead of time. That was just overnight.
This thing.
Yeah, this thing was dumping out 20 of them, and it had been doing that all the way from January through October. So most of a year, it was dropping 20 at a time, and then it shifted to 1.
Okay.
So this is kind of like a pretty good, I think this is a decent case study of like what can happen with an unplanned or an unforeseen update from the player side.
Yeah.
If you had a lot of Zulrah teleports,
you are now crazy rich.
Yeah. Because the demand didn't go down a ton. It shifts around because of the price. But this is also kind of an indication of just how much money you could make doing Zulrah compared to anything else at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, so like even as this like skyrockets to like the mid 50s and over 60K per teleport spell, like that is like people are still paying that enough for it to like sustain that market because it is such a like rich thing to do, right? Like it's so profitable to still run this boss.
Exactly.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. So that like the economy revolved around doing Zulrah essentially. I'd have to take a look. May 20. I'm trying to remember what would have tanked the price because you can see it drops down middle of 2017. My gut thought is that is when Vorkath came out.
Yeah, like there's probably just like a better gold per hour boss to go after.
Vorkath was early 2018. Very early 2018. So yeah, maybe I'll do some digging and see what would have tanked.
Huh.
That it also could have been like that could have been a bot farm that got nuked. Could have been a lot of things. Maybe we'll look into that at a later date. But so here's one way you can make money is by trying to play these kinds of things. This one was tough because there wasn't a lot of indication.
Yeah, it just happened.
But there is a lot of communication that happens between the game moderators and the community, both on Reddit and on Twitter.
Okay.
So it's not uncommon to see like a stray comment made by like a junior developer about maybe there being an upcoming change to a mechanic or something that can cause an item to like quadruple in price over the course of 4 hours.
Wild speculation on the market.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. So we're going to look at vodka next year. This is one we talked about a little bit last time, and I couldn't remember the specifics. So I went back and took a look, and I think I was pretty close in my guesses. So I'm going to send you another copy here. This one's going to show us some different market mechanics, but it's still going to be kind of similar. So here's another weird chart.
Okay.
So this one's going to take us back to September of 2017, which is when they added Fossil Island to the game. This might have been one of the first major like geographical expansions in old school. Fossil Island, super cool addition to the game. Tons of new training methods, a bunch of lore. We will do a Fossil Island episode at some point. It ties into the Dragon Slayer quest line very deeply, and like we'll get into the lore about the Dragonkin and all kinds of weird stuff with Fossil Island at some point.
Okay.
But for the purposes of today, all we need to know is that a new area of the map got added with a ton of new content. Everyone was super excited to go see it. And to get there, you had to complete the quest, Bon Voyage. In order to complete Bon Voyage, you need 2 vodka.
Okay.
It's one of the things you need. A relatively common theme in RuneScape quest lines is getting NPCs drunk to get information out of them. I assume that's what happened in that quest. I've only done it twice, I think. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
But it's not uncommon that you either get someone drunk to either ply them for information or make them friendly to you for some other reason.
Sure.
But you needed 2 vodka. Vodka, we can see there's definitely some price fluctuations in this graph. It looks like it's kind of ping-ponging roughly between like 250 and 800.
Yeah.
Relatively often. When we see an item like that's kind of bouncing around like these lines are, that's a pretty good indication that this is a low volume item that doesn't see a lot of daily movement. When we look at the Zulrah teleport one, those dots were like right there in a line. Those were steady. That's a better indication that that thing's, being traded hundreds of thousands of times a day, because that's going to smooth out those price fluctuations. In fact, we can actually check. Let's see what the daily volume of the Zulrah teleport is compared to vodka. Zulrah teleport now, the volume is sitting a little over 100k a day. I'm sure it was more back then. Let's see if I have a volume. I do. Oh, we do have records for that. Yeah, so anywhere from 300 to 500,000 a day.
Oh, okay. Jeez.
Okay, and then here, and then it drops down. Okay, so here we can actually see Forecast come out, because it actually tanks the volume of the number of Zulrah teleports traded. Drops it down under 100k, lower than it is now, even. That's interesting.
And that's just because...
people stop doing Zulrah and want to go do Vorkath instead.
Okay.
If we look at vodka, its daily volume is under 3,000, typically.
Okay.
Sometimes under 1,000.
Jeez.
So not a lot of vodka gets traded.
Which makes sense. It's a low value item, right? Like it is.
Yeah. It has almost no utility in the game. Yeah. It's used in a few quests. It's used in so the gnomes. The gnomes have like a weird cocktail culture and foodie culture. So there's there's a Uber mini game in old school RuneScape that predates Uber, I'm pretty sure. That you would, or I guess DoorDash would be a closer analogy. Sorry. Where like you take orders for very intricate and specific gnome food and cocktails and have to craft them from scratch and then go deliver them to various NPCs throughout the game to get some weirdly specific yet randomized rewards. Maybe
that's fantastic.
We'll talk about that in depth sometime.
I love that.
Yeah, so vodka gets used to make gnome cocktails and in a few quests, and I think for nothing else.
Okay.
So yeah, low volume because of that. It only enters the game through shops. So there's a handful of NPC-run stores that sell vodka for 5 GP.
Oh, okay. So this is not like a craftable item then?
No, it's not craftable, and it's not currently dropped by anything. So that's the other common way is like especially if an item gets gated like this didn't happen long term with vodka. The spike was only for like a few hours that we're going to talk about. But if an item gets pinched like long term, sometimes they'll add it to a drop table of a monster. We'll just maybe, start dumping out 50 of them at a time.
Yeah. To
try to bring that price back down. Not the case with vodka. The only way vodka comes into the game is 5 gold at a time given to an NPC, and they give you 1 vodka.
Jeez. Okay.
They're, at the time, I think I don't recognize 2 of these shops. It looks like it's in 5 shops right now. 2 of these words I've never seen before, which makes me think it's on the new continent that I have not been to yet. Yeah, that's absolutely what's happening. This is okay. This is interesting. This is really fun. We're going to talk about this. So, when Bon Voyage happened, there were only 3 shops in the game that stocked vodka. 5 at 2 of them, 10 at another one. So in any given server, at most, there's only 20 vodka available at a time.
Oh. So that's not per player. That's not per account. That's how much
world.
Jeez. Okay.
Of which there's, I don't know, 100 and change now, probably. So up to 2,000 people can fit into a server. They sit anywhere from a couple hundred players to like maybe 1,500, depending on what's going on. So that provides, and then those stocks in those stores restock over time. So one comes back every X number of seconds, and that number shifts around per store a little bit. But that gives you a hard limit on how much vodka can enter the game on any given day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our stage setting. So we have this quest coming into the game that requires 2 vodka. It can only be sold in these shops that have a shared stock across everyone who's playing on that server. Which means suddenly the demand for vodka is incredibly high.
Yeah. So like I can't even go to the new place without having this item.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't do the new quest, which some people just play the game to do quests. There's a whole cape you can get for having all the quests done. That's what drove me for a long time. That's my little Discord icon that we're looking at right now talking. That's from the quest cape. Like, that was my thing. So there's people who just do quests to do quests. But there was a ton of new content on the island. Like, it was a big deal. Everyone suddenly needed 2 vodka. And there's not a lot of vodka.
Yeah.
So that price starts to go up and up and up. And reports of it selling for up to 1 million GP started to circulate on the Grand Exchange. This thing normally trades for 200. It was very frequently trading for 20 to 100,000, even a few 100,000 at a time. And then, some people were reporting up to 1 million.
Jeez. Okay.
And if we look at the that price chart I sent you, there's an orange line and a blue line.
Yep.
So the orange line represents prices that people are putting into the exchange for what they're selling the item at.
Mm-hmm.
And the blue line represents offers for buying that item.
Yeah.
And typically, the orange line will be above the blue line, as we see through most of that graph.
Yeah.
But if you look, there's one little section where the orange line goes way down, and the blue line goes way up.
Yes.
And that is Bon Voyage. That is the stock being completely bought out. We don't see the orange line go up because there aren't buy offers, or there aren't sell offers being made because there's no item to sell.
Yep.
Yeah. They just don't exist anymore. They've been sold and taken out of the game through that quest.
Jeez.
And there's people still trying to buy it.
Yeah, that's wild. This is like, this is a pretty steady line chart with some peaks and valleys, and then all of a sudden there's mostly a straight line of sell offers with a skyrocketing blue line of buys. Jeez.
Yeah. So, because of this, this changed like the way that they deal with tradable quest items. They don't make situations that do this anymore.
Yeah, like was this a known, like you had to know, right? Like you make the,
so
like did they know what they were about to do to the economic situation of this game?
Now we're going to talk about our first old school RuneScape conspiracy theory.
Yes. Okay.
We're going to talk about Mod Jed just a little bit.
Okay.
People who play old school RuneScape will know that name. You will not. So there is some, if you go back and look at like the trade volume, there's some, about a month before Bon Voyage and Fossil Island launched, there's some like weird business with the trade volume of vodka that kind of looks like someone was maybe buying a lot of vodka, but slowly. I don't know if that's signal or noise I don't know if there's really a way to know. But let me pull up the Bon Voyage one here. The lead developer on Bon Voyage was Mod Jed, who was later fired from Jagex. There was some legal action after the fact on whether or not that firing was legal by UK standards. Mod Jed did win that for reasons that wouldn't exist in the United States.
Okay.
The ruling was basically like, yeah, you guys were like maybe too zeroed in on this person before you fired them, even though they absolutely did all of these things.
You were looking for a reason.
Yeah. Kind of. It was like you maybe should have looked at So what happened? What happened was in the short version, because this could be an episode too, is some of these weird things. But the short version is someone made a Reddit post and was like, hey, I have all of the possible security things in place. My account was hacked and all of my stuff is gone. Like, this should be impossible by everyone's understanding. And what eventually came out is that this mod was hacking players' accounts and taking items from them and transferring them to other accounts.
Okay.
To the tune of like up to 1 billion gold, depending on whose estimates you use. Or was it over 1 billion? Or was it 100 billion? It worked out to like almost 100K USD.
Oh wow! Okay,
that's
a lot.
It was significantly more than 1 billion. So there was also like ties between this employee, or supposed ties between this employee and the clan Rot, Reign of Terror, who is just like if 4chan was a RuneScape clan.
Great.
Or maybe Kiwi Farms, maybe. I don't know.
Better.
Somewhere in that range, kind of, depending on the
Yikes.
year. And that clan won multiple tournaments that paid out like 20K, I want to say it was. And there was also like very suspicious DDoSing that would happen during those tournaments.
And when you say 20K, you mean dollars, not gold?
20K human USD. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Like prize pool for like a PvP thing. So there's definitely some guesses people have made that Jed was maybe getting IPs using his internal powers and then passing those IP addresses on to this clan who would then DDoS their opponents. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I love me a conspiracy theory. This is good stuff.
Yeah. So there's and this isn't like the only time that people have been like, man, you could, if you like had the inside information on this stuff, you could make a lot of gold, which could then be sold to make a lot of human dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know how much economic activity revolves, I guess, through the selling of gold, but it is a lot. Jagex will sometimes release stats on like how much gold they've banned from bot accounts or the number of bot accounts, or frequently like the high scores list. You'll see players that are clearly bots on the high scores list that'll get banned, and you can kind of work backwards from their kill count to estimate how much gold they've generated.
Oh, wow.
And then use that number to estimate like how much USD that bot has generated. And it's not uncommon for bot farms to be making tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
Jeez. Where's the John Oliver episode about RuneScape bot farms?
I mean, there's a couple of YouTube channels that cover them. I have written papers about some of this, so maybe we'll get more in depth into that at some point. But yeah, so that's vodka. I guess.
Yep. Cool.
And like kind of another weird price mechanic or mechanism that'll happen with updates. And the last one I want to look at is going to be oak logs. So oak logs are a very common item. I'm going to give you another chart here. Let's see what the daily volume of oak logs is. I bet it is obscene. Oak logs are used for fire making and fletching and to be turned into planks for construction. Oak dungeon doors is a really common construction training method. That's kind of like a good midpoint between doing things very quickly and doing things very expensively.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, the graph that you sent me, the volume number goes up to 40 million. It looks like the... Yeah, this...
You get...
Woof.
A lot. People get a lot of oak logs. Now, they're produced from chopping oak trees, but also they are dropped by... Yeah, daily volume 1.7 million is what the wiki says right now.
Okay.
Per day.
That's a lot of logs.
Yeah, and like, so the buy limit on them is 15,000 every 4 hours.
Oh, yeah, okay, so they are moving a lot of logs from different people.
Yeah. And also keep in mind, like, that's not necessarily just to use them. Like, I factor into that when I buy oak logs and then sell them for a higher price.
Right.
That increases the volume. So it's not necessarily that 1.7 million are being, like, generated and consumed per day.
Yeah.
They're just moving through the market.
Yeah.
They get dropped from a couple things. They're very much a commodity. But when you have a trade volume like that, you end up with typically a relatively static price. But if you look like right towards like the first third to the second third of 2020,
yep,
that price goes up.
Yeah, it goes way up.
Like impossibly up. Yeah, the price was pretty static around 18 or so before that for looks like 5 or 6 months, probably 4 months.
Is that one single log for 18 gold?
Yes.
Okay.
One log for 18 gold. And then it shoots up to about 140.
Yeah.
Over the course of a few days.
Yeah.
And then you can see it relatively slowly trends down over the rest of the year.
Yeah, yeah.
And it never quite returns back down to that 18.
Yeah, it looks like it's like hovering around 30 is the lowest it goes.
Mm-hmm. So, that's another one that we're going to look at an update for, which was, here we go, Easter event, April 2nd, 2020. One of the things added on with this Easter event, they kind of bundled in and backdoored, were new account restrictions. We talked about this a little bit last time. So this changed how new accounts could interact with the trade system. Oak logs are available in the free-to-play version of the game.
Okay.
They're a pretty core item, so every account type has access to both chopping down oak trees and using oak logs. That also means when you bot oak logs, you can do that with a free-to-play bot.
Right.
Which drastically changes like the economics of botting that item.
Right.
When we looked at the Zulrah example, if you want to bot Zulrah, you need like level 80 magic, and you need to have membership on that account. So you're already in for, I don't know, at least just the membership at the time would have been $10 or $12.
Right.
And then
it's however long it takes you to
3
get
hours,
there.
it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So like that changes, like you can't bot everything. You can't bot, like a resource in a members lane like that, because you're just not gonna, it's hard to make 10 mil, 18 gold at a time.
Right.
For that bot to break even over the course of 2 weeks. Not even accounting for it getting banned. But a free-to-play item, if that thing gets banned after 6 hours, whatever.
Yeah, you got your logs.
It cost you nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And oak logs, you can start chopping oak logs with, I think, 15 wood cutting. It'll take, I don't know, half an hour before you can start generating oak logs. So it's a pretty easy thing to bot. and to bot quickly. And if your stuff dies, it's not a big deal because the overhead's really low. So, to try to combat that, they added in some trading restrictions to new accounts. There are certain items that they can't sell at all. They try to basically kind of plug all of the loopholes that botters were using to offload their items before the bot detection system could ban them.
Okay.
So they put these restrictions into place. Those restrictions get lifted after you've played 20 hours and earned 10 quest points, I think.
Okay.
If you're a normal player,
Easy
it doesn't
peasy, no
impose
problem.
much of a burden at all. Yeah, and they like exempted a couple other things. Like they did a pretty good job of making it as low impact for a human player as possible while still maximally slowing down bots.
Yeah.
So what we are looking at on this graph is those restrictions going into play.
Yeah.
Which immediately broke all of those bots
Yep.
that normally are generating logs and getting banned in 4 or 6 hours or 10 hours. So that meant the supply got bought up very quickly.
Right.
And if you look at the volume, there's some spikes in volume too that coincide with that price going up. There's little orange bars.
Oh,
and
yeah.
One blue bar.
Oh, yeah. Those are huge.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the volume drastically changing at the same time. The buy volume, primarily. So I'm not positive, but I'm pretty confident that the orange bars are going up from people like me who immediately realize, like, oh man, these oak logs are about to get real expensive.
Yep.
So I'm going to try to buy like 20,000 of them today, and I'll hold on to them for 3 days, and then I'll try to sell them 3 days later.
Yeah.
So, and then that blue bar is people doing exactly that. So now we're just seeing suddenly the volume is spiking because people are either flipping it or stockpiling it and or selling their stockpiles depending on their own situation.
Jeez.
And then we see the volume almost immediately tanks back down.
Yeah, like drops pretty down. Like the volume does.
The demand
the
didn't
price.
spike.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's both a combination of the supply drying up from the bots being broken and the bot script owners not having bots ready to go to work around these new restrictions.
Yeah.
And then people flipping the item as it rises.
Wow.
And then we start to see that price stabilize once the flipping became more difficult, and suddenly the bots are going to start to catch up.
But even like those restrictions are still in place, I'm assuming, to some degree, right?
Yes. Yep. Those are still there. And I think that's a big reason why we're not back down to 18.
Right. Yeah. Like it's still difficult
closer to 30 to 40
to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah. That's wild. Especially for just like such a base level resource.
Yeah. It was a fun time because suddenly, like, kind of as we talked about with Zulrah, you end up conceptualizing this game in terms of GP per hour coming in and coming out.
Yeah.
And suddenly, there was a free-to-play moneymaker that was suddenly pretty good. Like, you could make an okay profit per hour just at chopping down oak trees.
Yeah.
Way better than most other free-to-play activities, and better than a lot of members' activities for a couple days there.
Yeah, that's really funny. Especially, like, what is this? April 2020. So some, it's a real sign of the times.
Yes.
There's a lot of people online now.
Oh yeah, we could do a whole wild retrospective on how COVID and lockdowns influenced both the market and just the game in general.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that it's very silly to see. I don't know, like the tokenization basically of like this one digital piece of currency or like a digital resource is now being affected, like it is a resource within the world and it is being affected by account level changes that are happening in this game. And it's very difficult to hear you talk about some of this stuff and not immediately think about like, oh, well, look at that. They just made the ability to participate in the economy that much more difficult for a group of people that to the developer basically don't exist, but they're still bots that are holding up this one particular part of the economy, and like, yes, maybe using the money they get from that to like turn it into actual currency, but they are like doing economic work for this economy. And then they just decided that like to tamp down on this not so good real life version of this, that it has like real, it has in fiction world implications for what the game is actually doing and how people play with it.
Yeah. And then there's like this whole, there's a weird push and pull with the interactions between bots and jagex themselves. Because a lot of the bots are paying members. So if you get too good at banning bots, like that's just
it's a revenue hit.
You are, yeah. But if you don't have like, you're also going to drop your player count too.
Right.
And they are a traded company now. So like
this is the Twitter problem.
So you need, yes, you yep. But also, and then the flip side of that is like, here, let's find out. Let me put numbers to oak dungeon doors. Like, I don't want to go chop oak logs, man. That's not how I want to spend my time in this game.
Right.
So, and I don't know if I've like really given the scale. Okay. So an oak dungeon door takes 10 planks, and 1 log gives you 1 plank. So you need 10 oak logs to make an oak dungeon door. You unlock oak dungeon doors at 74 construction. Let's go to the construction training page, and this will tell us how many oak dungeon doors we would need to make to go from 74 to 99. At level 74, we want to go to level 99. So that will take 198,970 oak logs.
Jeez.
To go from level 74 to level 99 construction. So 200,000 oak logs. We'll round up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woof.
Let's see if I could. I'm not even sure how many you can cut down per hour. It's not 200,000. It's not a lot. Let's see. OSRS logs per hour. Here's someone. Oh, it's a YouTube video. Oh, here we go. Oh, they just use dollar amounts. We'll say maybe 1,000. It looks like less than 1,000 logs an hour.
Yeah, that's not enough to make all those doors I need to make.
Right, and then you need to spend time turning them into planks too. So if you're not an Iron Man account who needs to do that, then like chopping oak logs for 200 hours versus just that's 100 versus just buying them versus doing Zulrah or Vorkath or something for 20 hours and then using that gold to buy the logs or buy the planks.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then the bots like dry up and go away or are more difficult to get, and now you have a run on the Jeez.
But if you're jagex, you kind of like, to keep me playing the game, you need those logs in the market. Because I'm not doing it.
Right.
I'll quit. Yeah, I'm not chopping. I'll do a lot of dumb things in this game, but I'm not chopping 200. I'm not cutting down 200,000 oak trees.
Right.
That's not my brand of broken. It definitely is some people's. More power to them. But I'll leave. So there's like definitely a theory that you want some amount of bots to be doing the like menial labor.
Right.
We're gonna get into like this is a weird gateway into labor discourse, maybe.
Yep.
But like, do you need your underclass in the game to do the grunt work to make it more enjoyable for everybody else? Yeah.
Well, and I mean, you layer in the second part there too, right? Like, I imagine that the player base for this game is more of a slightly increased line, potentially. Like, maybe it is going up or it is stable, but you're not having incredibly huge spikes where you have new players coming in all the time, getting these things and being like, well, I don't need all these oak logs. I'm just going to sell them on the exchange to get like the next level of thing that I need. So you're almost completely reliant on a group of bots to deal with the hundreds of thousands of oak logs that you need to like max out those higher level characters.
Uh-huh. Or do you take the counter argument that maybe cutting oak logs should give you a living wage? The economy clearly needs oak logs. Uh-huh. Would that give new players more economic reach in the early to mid game than they have currently? Because right now there's no, like, anything that is low level and easy to do. There's going to be 10,000 bots doing it,
right?
Compared to like your player base. So now you've made the game arbitrarily more difficult for your new players to move from early to mid game,
right?
Because they have no reliable money makers.
Yeah, because like I guess the other part of this is that those bots, like, they are chopping down trees, and those trees disappear from the world, and like they will come back in time. But if it is like over indexed, not bots who are chopping them down, like, I'm not going to stand here at 3 a.m. East Coast time to get my 7 trees in while I can.
Yeah. There's no reason for you to, like, the price is just so low that there's not.
Yeah, it's just not
worth it. There are plenty of other things you could be doing to generate any more amount of gold than that. And then you get the argument of just like, well, all the good money makers are, like, here's kind of another wrinkle to that, or another variable to factor in between, like, the Jagex player-bot relation, is does that incentivize new players into membership faster? Because that's where the better money makers are.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a decision point where, yes, you're losing some new players because the money makers aren't good, but maybe you're monetizing a higher percentage than you would otherwise for the same reason.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why they had to hire an economist to try to, like, figure out the inflation problem. And then we can get into, like I said, all kinds of these kind of more conspiracy-like theories of, like, well, how many does Jagex have a quota of how many bots that they absolutely want to have in the game due to them paying for membership or any of those other reasons we just covered?
Yeah.
I don't know. The incentives are weird in both directions.
Yeah, they really are. That is like a weird wrinkle to this. Like, you always hear, like, well, bots are bad and I want them to go away. Like, I don't want to have all of these weird porn bots in my account anymore. Like, please go away. But then you look at this and you're like, well, sure would be nice if oak logs were still 18 gold.
And then you also look at it as a new person and you're like, man, I just chopped down all these oak logs to go from 15 to 35 wood cutting, and
I get nothing.
They're worth nothing. Like, yeah. I can literally make more money going to a player versus player server and picking up arrows on the ground to sell.
Yeah,
that I can chopping down oak logs and getting XP for it.
Huh.
And like, that's a weird.
That's also
not a
weird
good thing either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird. Huh.
So yeah, hopefully this was a little tighter look into, like, the intricacies of this game that kind of keep me coming back to it.
Yeah, no, it was. This is very informative and has, like, some... It has definitely some weird wrinkles that I had not expected, and I guess it makes sense with a fully functional economy, but it is weird.
And you start to see, like, the lore build up outside of the game too.
Yeah.
Concurrent with the in-game stuff. And I think next time what we're going to do is actually just talk about Zulrah and that expansion.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the uniques that came in from that completely changed combat in the game forever. It introduced a ranged weapon that was the most dominant weapon in the game for, like, close to a decade, I think.
Is this like the fabled twisted bow? This
will be the toxic blowpipe.
Oh, hell yeah. You mean I get a toxic blowpipe from the money snake?
You get a toxic blowpipe. Well, so technically you get the fang of the money snake. And if you have a high enough crafting level and a chisel, you can turn that fang into a blowpipe.
Nice.
Because what is a giant fang other than like a hollowed out cone that you can, So,
okay.
Which is another good grand exchange moneymaker. That's another, I guess I don't know if we covered that last time, but another way you can make money is like buying items like that.
Yeah.
The twisted fang, using a chisel on it for a second, and then reselling that as a blowpipe.
Flipping it, yeah.
Because whoever got the fang from Zulrah didn't have the crafting level.
Couldn't do it.
In order to make it themselves.
Huh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So there. That's an episode.
That's good stuff. I will see if I can embed these graphs. I know some people out there like looking at some graphs, so we'll see if we can put them in the chat or something, or maybe they'll just be we'll put them on the page on the site.
Yeah, worst case I can put them on the site and we can put a link.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Anyway,
there will be a way for people to see these graphs. They're good graphs.
Yeah, they're good graphs.
Much chart. Yeah, they're great.
All right. So if you like the show, if you have some new OSRS stock speculation you would like to share, GordonHamburger.com is the site. Rate and review us. You know the drill. Let's see. Oh yeah, we have a contact us thing on the site. If you have like a piece of world building that you want us to look into, something that you have been gnawing at and think this would make a good episode, shoot it our way. Otherwise,
if you're mad about any of the things I almost certainly got wrong during these old school RuneScape episodes, feel free to correct me.
Yeah. You could either correct us or you could send that to Google at google.com. That's also a good one. But yeah, until next week when we have another fun Codex entry. We're doing a double today, and I have a very good one lined up that I'm excited to talk about. So stay tuned for that one.
I will.
All right. Adios until next week.